Welcome to the CloudPod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 188, recorded for the week of November 9th, 2022. The CloudPod thinks the AWS Switzerland region is a big plus. Watching you guys try not to laugh is kind of hilarious. So when we write our show notes for all our listeners at home, we list out our really terrible ideas, and then we all try to pick one that we. And so Jonathan put this in there, and I'm reading through it. I'm like, the CloudPod thinks AWS Switzerland is a big plus, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then I got it. But it was like 2 or 3 minutes later, I was like, oh, and now that's how. So when we explained this before the show, and then I read it out loud, and they all just tried not to snicker through the laughter of it.
I could not help it.
Yeah,
I broke.
Yeah, it's a big plus. Yeah,
my wife would hate it as a joke. My wife would hate it, which means I love it.
Yeah, she doesn't listen to you on the podcast anyway, so she'll never know.
She'll never know.
Yeah. Spousal listening to our podcast. I don't know how many of them do that. So.
Not here.
Yeah. Well, we actually have a shorter show this week after the 2 mammoth shows we just did. I'm actually really pleased about this. So we're finally going to talk about Dora. Dora report came out at the end of September, and it's been in our show note backlog for weeks now, just we haven't been able to fit it in. But we all love the Dora report here, or the State of the DevOps report. And so this year's report rates companies across 3 dimensions: software delivery performance, operational performance, and organizational performance. They surveyed about 1,350 people, working professionals across the globe. And SLSA, or software supply chain security, was a big focus in this year's survey in particular. One of the things they talked about was one of the biggest impacts to security practices is actually cultural, not technical. And high trust, low blame cultures focused on performance were 1.5 times more likely to have above average adoption of emerging security practices than low trust, high blame cultures focused on power of rules. So one of the changes this year in the report, they did start segmenting out the group in a couple different ways. But the one that you're traditionally used to is the elite performer, high performer, low performer ranking. But this year they actually said that the elite performer versus high performer was not enough of a differentiation. And so they just lumped them together, which may be a reflection of the people who took the survey. But their hypothesis was, without evidence, that software development has seen a reduced innovation in terms of practices, tooling, and information sharing, possibly due to the pandemic. But they're going to do some follow-up research to see if that is the case. So in 2021, they had 26% of respondents in elite, 40% in high, 28% in medium, and 7% in low performing. Whereas in 2022, it was 11% in high, 69% in medium, and 19% in low. Which again, I don't know if that's a reflection of actually a deteriorating DevOps situation, or just really survey respondents once again.
Could be maturing, right?
It could be that too, which actually is a good segue to their new clustering methodology they added in this year. Is they're adding in this new grouping called starting, flowing, slowing, and retiring. And so they basically break this into: a starting group performs neither well nor poorly across any of the dimensions they focus on. The flowing cluster performs well across all characteristics of high reliability, high stability, and high throughput. The slowing do not deploy too often, but when they do, they are likely to succeed. And this is typically a team incrementally improving, but they have customers who are mostly happy with the current state. And then the retiring is teams that work on a service or app that is valuable to them and the customer, but no longer under active development. And they broke down the population as 28% in the starting, 17% in the flowing, slowing is 34%, and retiring is 21%. I don't like the name of the slowing, but other than that, I don't mind the other 3 categories.
I'm not sure I quite understand them all. Or, I get what they're going for, but it is sort of strange to me, because when I think about a team and not a product or process, like it's a little strange to think of a team as flowing, for instance, right? And the maturity of that team and their processes fitting that description looks a little strange.
Yeah, that's why the slowing makes me sound like they're not doing as well. But what they're saying is they're actually incrementally growing, but slowly. That's a different problem altogether.
These just make me realize how abstract our jobs are.
Or how you can abstract our jobs away. Yeah. Let me go find this thing here. So they have the flowing group in particular. They're talking about basically the things they see in highly flowing teams are loosely coupled architectures that provide flexibility in the work arrangements. They use version control, continuous CI with typically a centralized trunking methodology, and a continuous delivery capability focused on production safety, sustainability, and efficiency to be in that flowing category. So that's where you want to be. That's kind of like the old high achieving group. But now it really focused on those particular categories.
I really guess it depends on what your product is and where it's deployed as well. I mean, highly likely you're going to be in the flowing category if you're running a server in the closet or maybe even in a colo someplace.
Yeah, that's true. They talked about cloud adoption. They saw an overall 36% increase in the use of public cloud, 25% increase in hybrid cloud usage this year in those numbers and metrics. They did see no cloud dropped about 50% in the respondent rate. So everyone's using cloud somewhere, just a question of where. The SRE section, they spent a lot of time talking about the J curve, and what they talked about was that they're seeing in the data that orgs hit early success, followed by periods of diminished returns or even regressions on their SRE journey. But for companies that persist through the challenges of that, they're saying they often experience renewed and sustained levels of elevated achievement to that. So then there was a bunch of surprises that were sort of interesting that they highlighted. First of all, they talked about loosely coupled architecture might actually be contributing to burnout on teams. They think there should be an opposite effect, but it was counter to what research they see in the past. But they go on later in the article to talk about basically unplanned work, which is a leading contributor to burnout. And that in the loosely coupled architecture, sometimes without proper planning, you end up with more unplanned work, which is not necessarily unplanned, but it's an evolution of the agile and negotiating the contracts between the loosely coupled architecture components. And so people may be seeing it as unplanned and burnout related, but really it's just part of the benefit of what you're getting. It just takes more work up front.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest challenges, right? As you decouple things, is to keep all those separate things now marching in sync. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier in a monolithic sort of structure or a mono repo structure, to try to get that all marching in the same direction at the same time. So it's true. I mean, it's one of those things you always find out that what it doesn't work in integration way late in the process. You still got to meet the release deadline.
Yep.
I guess the early successes make sense because if you're starting from nothing, it's there's the low hanging fruit. It's easy to make early wins, and then it is a slog.
Enthusiasm's hard to maintain too, right? Rallying up. We're making this change. We're introducing all this great stuff to achieve great things. Achieving that, maintaining that over years, that level of energy is very difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be said for people being excited to work on the shiny new thing and not the grind.
For then the shiny new thing becomes the grind.
Other surprises: security requirements that are defined and controlled by a centralized security organization may be more difficult for teams to decouple their software from other teams. So actually, centralized security is basically a hindrance to loosely coupled architecture, which I've seen in the real world. And so again, this is another reason why you should be shifting left your security concerns, and that's important. They talked about the trunking-based practices in prior reports were a positive view on software delivery, but in this year they were seen as a negative impact, and they don't know if that's just a fluke in the user population or if it's an actual trend. So again, they're going to keep an eye on that. They did say that software delivery performance is beneficial to organizational performance when operational performance is also high, yet many respondents did not have high operational performance, yet still said their software delivery and organizational performance was good. So that tells me that SRE is maybe not fully adopted still in many organizations, and they don't have good metrics and KPIs around that. But that's an area I think it's just, again, I think SRE is so new that I think this is an area that the market's still kind of catching up to.
I mean, SRE doesn't feel new, but it's also sort of like operational performance can be measured in a lot of different ways. If you're strictly talking about uptime and production availability, fine. But it's also I think it's too hard to separate when you're filling out one of these surveys that your operational team's performance in terms of delivery of environment or delivery of their
they purely think operational. The survey questions are strictly around reliability and uptime. So I mean, they sort of bias the question because your service may be failing but recovering nicely and not impacting KPIs because you've built in resiliency, but that's not. It depends on how you measure these things, and that's not always a clear, unified answer. Let's see. What else they had here. Documentation practices this year came up as a negative impact to software delivery performance, which again is at odds with prior reports where documentation was highlighted as a key driver to success of an organizational delivery performance. Reliability engineering practices seem to have a negative impact on software delivery performance, which I agree, and it should, because you need to actually design reliability into your software delivery, and so that's a change for a lot of companies. And then there was a thought that SLSA, or the security lifecycle, is going to have some association between implementation of security and performance, but they were surprised that security practices are actually the mechanism through which technical capabilities impacted software delivery performance and organizational performance. So those are all the big surprises they had. They also focused on Westrum's organizational topology, and they break the organizational culture into pathological leadership, bureaucratic leadership, and generative leadership. And they talked about generative leadership being a big focus of successful organizations, which makes sense. And then they talked about the importance of team stability, as teams that were together for more than 12 months appear to have a higher performing organizational standards. So then they go into all the little nitty gritty detail of the report. And they do break into demographics. And again, I mentioned earlier that there was 1,350, but it's interesting looking at the demographics. They are, very heavy U.S. and India as the two main regions that participated this year in the survey. 21%, I believe, was in U.S. and then 20. Let me find it here real quick. 29% in America and 21% in India, and then no other country was more than 8% of the population. So I was thinking about our outsource culture, and I wonder if some of these things are a reflection of the outsource culture, where we dump repetitive, non-value work to India inappropriately, by the way. But that's what, a lot of companies do that. And so that's why this is maybe skewing some of these data sets to be a little bit more not aligned to what they've seen in prior years.
Interesting.
It's hard to compare, though, because they didn't actually break down countries before. It's a new question this year. So this is the first time they've ever actually looked at the country population, but something to kind of keep an eye on. Because again, I wonder if we do a really good job on DevOps and organizational health and these things in the US. And I don't know, and in other, countries that have pretty strong IT organizations, I don't know that we do a good job exporting that to India and to our outsourcing partners, and I think it's an area we probably need to focus on as an industry.
And in fact, we do the opposite, right? We take all this stuff, instead of refining the process and adding efficiencies, and there we just dump it over to India for them to resolve, just clicking the button with human spackle.
I'd say also, even here in the US, though, I mean, although there are DevOps organizations who are maturing their capabilities, there's lots of companies now who are just rebranding everything they do as DevOps.
Yep.
And so, my title is DevOps, and I got into the interview, and basically we do everything. Mm-hmm. We do everything just like we used to, and we call it DevOps. So
yeah. Well, that was really the problem with the fact that we really bastardized the whole idea of DevOps as a cultural change, not as a team thing. And then we labeled all these teams that were doing something similar and said, no, that's the DevOps team. And it was a whole violation of the whole principles of what DevOps is supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're going to, the thought that we're going to make it one team and call it DevOps. And then the end result is we have three teams, Dev, Ops, and DevOps in the end.
That's what happened, right? Like, and it's like, is this, wait, are we developers on the application? No, we're just release engineers all of a sudden. How did this happen?
Yeah. Yep, that is very true and unfortunate. So overall, did you guys have any other opinions about the DORA report from your reading through? I thought it was sort of, I know I'm really inspired by the DORA report. I was not as inspired this year. I don't know if, again, because it's more not as there's something really revolutionary in the report this year, or it's just not as, again, because there wasn't a lot of high elite performers to compare yourself to. Maybe it didn't really feel like more status quo. I don't know.
I couldn't quite figure it out either, but I had a hard time reading this report as well. And it just seemed like the tone was off. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't inspirational. Which is usually what I take away from this, which is there's other companies that are in the same position I am in, and there's companies that are doing far better, and these are the practices that are working. There was less of that tone, and I think it was more, I don't know if they're, I don't know if it was just trying to be statistical or trying to remove bias, but I ended up skimming through most of it, if I'm honest. So, but I do like the fact they did talk, the part I did find inspiring was that the culture of security, because it's something I've been up on a soapbox for a long time, which is like, you can't have a centralized security just enforcing rules, because it's going to lead to things like shadow IT and people circumventing these rules in order to get their job done. And so you really have to treat security as a partnership and as a service, and use your expertise in the security field to help the rest of the business, not treat them like children who need to be supervised.
I had a hard time figuring out how I could use the information in the report really to better myself or the team or anybody else. It did seem very statistical, and it really is, but it's hard to take any of the contents and say, okay, with the exception of the security thing, which is something that we've known about for a long time, but I guess it's nice to have that surfaced in a report that people are going to read. But yeah, no, it wasn't very thrilling, and the fact that they changed the way they measure things year over year makes it difficult to really interpret any trends. A bit more standardization would be good. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what they, how they evolve it for this year or 2023. But yeah, I definitely think I'll be going back to the 2021 report for inspiration when I need it, because I think there's a little bit more of that high performers to compare yourself to in that one than this year. So, but that doesn't mean it's not bad. I mean, there's still good data there. It's just don't maybe send this one out to all your CIO friends and say, like, this is super important, you should do this, because I don't know that it reads that way this time around. All right, well, let's move on to AWS, who has their new region in Zurich, Switzerland, open for business, becoming the 28th region, EU Central-2. The new region has 3 availability zones and a wide selection of AWS services for all of your needs. And I guess based on in Zurich, Switzerland, it's going to be a lot of banking needs. But definitely going to be a good region in Europe. I'm sure a lot of customers are going to be interested in this one.
I'm sure it's a nice addition, having another DR site within there, within the strict data confines. So it's good.
All right, you guys have much to say about Switzerland, other than the flag is a big plus. So
big plus. I definitely want to go check it out. I hear it's beautiful.
Oh yeah, Zurich is amazing. Yeah. I had the joy of going and visiting Zurich Financial Services one time for a client. They were a client of mine at a prior life, and I had to then go to our data center in Amsterdam, and so I booked a train. And so I took the train from Zurich through Germany to Amsterdam, and that was the best train trip I've ever taken in Europe. It's just, everything was gorgeous. You came into Munich, in the big Gothic churches and stuff in Munich, and then you head into Amsterdam from there. It was sort of funny though, because you in Munich you switch from Swiss rail to German rail, and you go from precision by a clock stopping at every I had the timetable, and we were at every stop exactly when they said we would be. And then I got to Germany, and we were on German rail, and it was late 18 minutes by the time we got to the very end. So,
I mean, they are known for their watches, so
they are known. They are known for their time precision. That is a definite thing.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
Well, AWS has fixed one of those annoyances that you notice only when your SOC team comes to you and says, instance IAB34 blah, 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 has a potential security issue, and we'd like you to fix it. And they give you zero metadata other than the account. And you're like, well, I have resources deployed everywhere. I don't know where that thing lives, and I need to find it. And then so your typical answer was go click through each region in the AWS console. Or like Brian and I and Jonathan have done many times, we go write Boto3 code and parse all of our AWS regions to find the instance in question to do something about it. AWS, though, has finally ended our suffering, or maybe, I'll probably stick with my script, but AWS has ended it for everyone else who just learned this is a problem by giving you the new AWS Resource Explorer. And with it, you can search through your AWS resources and your account across regions using metadata such as name, tag, and ID. And when you find the resource, you can quickly jump to the correct service page to work with that resource immediately. To use it, you do enable some indexes and querying and an aggregator. And you can also create custom views and data sets using the queries to the aggregator for quick access later. And my only point to this is like, this is great. I love it. But can you please extend it to the organization? Because when the other problem is SOC doesn't always give you the right account either.
Right. I have to assume that that's coming because that's the biggest, the advantage to something like this is being able to search all of your accounts at once, especially, in modern terms. And so like it's coming. It has to be coming.
Yeah. I'm putting it on my list of potential reInvent announcements.
Yeah.
And it's free to use too, which is cool. Like when I saw the thing about having to click to enable the indexer or the aggregator, was like, oh, okay, and how much is this going to cost?
Yeah, no, I'm shocked.
But no, zero additional cost. They probably realize, though, that people like you and I who write scripts that just fire off tens of thousands of API requests to all the accounts, all the regions, probably cost them more than it would to just deliver this service.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just the
EC2 API alone to pull the list of regions, right? Like that module, just hitting that every run.
I still don't think you can find an IP address, though, that's attached to an instance.
What?
It's a
I'm looking at the query syntax for Boto3 and I'm trying to.
Unless you have an EIP, which has its own ID, I don't think you could just plug in an IP address and say, which instance does this IP come from? So it's still not the final solution from the SOC team requests. But
I'm sure you'd get the virtual NIC returned, but then you still have to connect the dots. Yeah. I don't know. I have to play around.
Yeah, I definitely enabled the indexes. Then I forgot to go back and play with it after I enabled the indexes because it doesn't work immediately. You have to wait a couple minutes for it to populate the indexes. But
that's what I did too.
I got that far in my testing, and
then something shiny.
Yeah. Well, that's it for AWS. I mean, that's the least amount of AWS news we've had in a very long time. So thanks for that, AWS.
Yeah, they're preparing.
They're just doing that. Yeah, they're just breathing in deeply for all the reInvent noise they're about to make. They're about to spew a ton of data onto us, I'm sure, in the next few weeks. Well, GCP is announcing the MongoDB connector for Apogee integrations. They like to say that MongoDB is a developer-friendly application data platform that makes it easy for developers to access a wide variety of data using a unified language interface, simplifying the data handling process. I can also tell you that MongoDB is not an enterprise-friendly application because it will cost you an arm and a leg. But developers might find it friendly. As a purchaser and a user of it, I don't find it friendly.
Yeah.
MongoDB Atlas, of course, is their fully managed cloud database for those who also want to burn even more money running Mongo, which enhances MongoDB capabilities even further with a full test search and real-time analytics, as well as event-driven and mobile experiences. Apogee has partnered with Mongo to provide a solution to ease and secure access to siloed data for internal developers or partners, and this is now being announced as a new connector between Apogee and Mongo. The connector saves you time and allows your dev team to focus on your apps versus dealing with connector logic and workflows. And they talk about this in the article as like creating connection strings to Mongo was really difficult. So again, I go back to this developer-friendly comment. I'm not sure how developer-friendly it is if it's difficult to do, but this basically helps you eliminate some toil and some undifferentiated heavy lifting on how you connect between your MongoDB and your Apogee interface.
I think the thing that it does do, though, which may have been difficult to do within Mongo natively, is think of all the healthcare applications and finance applications where you want row-based security and you want to limit certain applications from accessing certain data, where you need to transform data on request. All that stuff would be really hard to do in Mongo. It was never built to handle data like a relational database. But if you stick Apogee in front of the Mongo database backend, you can specify rules and say that this user, this service account can have access to all the data. This other user, we're going to obfuscate this particular field, or this other user, we're just not going to return this stuff. So it lets you have really fine-grained, almost, I'm going to say row-based because it's not a relational database, but effectively gives you the same types of controls over the data returned to the clients as all these other Postgres and SQL row-based security systems would provide.
Is it native? Like, I know you can do transformations, but can you just say, like, is the rule engine native to the connector?
To the integration, yeah, and you can bring your own. Just as Lambda has custom authorizers and things, you can build custom authorizers for this.
Okay, you've just changed my mind real time, because my first take on this was I hated this. I was like, this is just lazy development, right? Like being able to query centralized things and not knowing where the back end is or knowing where the data is, and this is just going to lead to MongoDB sprawl and resource abuse. But
yeah,
now I get it.
The other, I guess the other thing it does is it puts a RESTful interface in front of the data store,
right? And
that opens up a whole bunch of opportunities with other integrations to other services.
Well, and that's really what like the microservices framework or architectural pattern is really provided, and people need to do that, and really to adhere to a microservice contract, you have to put that API layer in front of your data set. And so I still think that this is ripe for abuse. But yeah, I get it.
Everything is ripe for abuse in your hands.
That's true.
If it's any good, if it's worth anything, it's
the first thing I try to do is break everything. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
Boto, ripe for abuse.
Indeed. Well, Flex committed use discounts, a simple new way to discount compute engine instances on Google, is now available. Now, we talked about it when it came out in preview, and you had to get access to it. And then they announced it at Google Next, but you couldn't actually use it. So now, you can officially use it. So if you're not on the preview list, you don't have an account rep, and you want to get a flexible committed use discount, you can now go click the button in the console. It all exists. And all the reporting now works, which if as someone in the preview, the reporting didn't work very well.
That's a bonus.
So that's a win. But yeah, so there you go. For those of you who don't know who flexible CUDs are, because you haven't heard those episodes where we talked about it at depth in the past, it's similar and superior to resource-based CUDs. It's also similar to savings plans on AWS. If your workloads may change over time, you take advantage of new instance families. This allows you to get that commitment without locking into a specific N1 or N2 instance class. CUDs can be purchased from any billing account, and the discount can apply to any eligible usage and products paid for by that billing account. Discounts, of course, are not quite as good as resources, because you are, again, not committing specifically to like an N1 or N2 class, but you are getting more flexibility, and you're paying a little bit less to get that flexibility, a little bit more to get that flexibility. So make sure you determine the right balance between the two types of CUDs in the future, so you get the right discounting level for your workload.
I mean, this type of flexibility is another arrow in the quiver, right? Because if you stick to specific resource allocations, right, you can stifle innovation. Like, so we've already committed for 3 years to run on this instance type, and so we've already got the CPU to burn or whatever. Like, it's why would you prioritize any kind of efficiencies there? But having this sort of middle ground where you can say, it's not directly tied to those specific resources, and you can still get that savings is a great plan to move. To transition to another set and maybe repurchase, resource specific CUDs once you're done. Like, it's great.
I mean, there's been so many times where, we've seen Amazon on their side, right, where they would come out with, they have Intel based C3 instances, right? And then they came out with the C4, and then they added C4As for AMD. And it's like, oh, I could save 10% if I use AMD over an Intel, but you were locked in because you bought a reserved instance.
Mm-hmm.
And then Graviton came out on Amazon, and so if you were locked in, you would never get the advantages of Graviton. But because they moved a savings plan on AWS, it now became like, oh, well, I can go experiment with Graviton, I can go experiment with AMD, I can go make that choice because now I have that flexibility. And so now the same thing exists for Google. So you can now go use Google, instances that have different Intel chips or AMD chips, or when they get better, more ARM-based processors, you can now use those as well. It is a little bit limited to the number of instances types that it covers for FlexCuds, but I assume that's just an expansion thing. It's going to happen over time when availability is maybe a little bit better on silicone that they can't really resource well today. But again, having the N1, the N2, and then I think it's also the C class instances all covered by this are really the most common general purpose instance types that you're going to need.
Yeah, I'm sure they're directing traffic with that, right?
Yeah.
I guess the only problem is this doesn't guarantee you access to a resource, or it doesn't guarantee that a resource is available for you.
Right.
So, if you
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's been a problem on Amazon too, and so they did talk about in the article. You can get a reservation in addition to this, but I'm not a big fan of reservations because I don't feel it's very cloudy. To have to reserve capacity. I mean, if I need to reserve capacity for regulatory reasons or for my DR contractual commitments, then that's fine. I don't mind that. But if I'm just a normal cloud customer, I want to be able to be flexible, and I don't want to have to do reservations, because the reality about a reservation is I pay for it if I use it or not. So it kills auto scaling. It kills a bunch of other things that are really good benefits of cloud. And so reservations, I've never been a big fan of them, just because I feel like it's a really anti-cloud pattern.
But it's brutal, right? When it's back when you only had the option of on-demand or reserved instances, and you do the math, and if you run the thing basically more than 40 hours a week, you might as well buy the RI.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting any benefit out of scaling anyway at that point. So this is so much better. You get the benefit of committing to an aggregate use and the discount to that, with the benefit of turning stuff off when you're not using it.
Yeah. But if you had to do a reservation on top of that, then you're paying a portion of the of the price for the reservation, which if you have it off, you're still paying that reservation. It's like it's a spreadsheet math problem, but it can work out in your favor, but you got to do the math.
Yep. Finance is getting their way, weaseling their way into IT.
Hey, you control the checkbook. You always see that. Yeah. It's a position of power.
That's one thing I learned as I got into higher levels of management, is that I become more and more of a CFO IT guy, learning how to do modeling and financial predictions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Partner with your finance team.
Yep. Especially if you're going to cloud, like you want them to be your ally, because they will not understand why the cost dramatically rose today.
And they can break you.
They sure can. And you can break your company really quickly too. So you gotta be careful. All right. Then our last group of here is Azure. And they are announcing the zero downtime migration for Azure Front Door is now in preview. You can now migrate between the premium and standard Azure Front Door with zero downtime. This allows you to try the different service levels to determine if you want premium or standard, and also migrate from the classic legacy versions of Azure Front Door. They also wanted to let us know in this article that since the general availability of the new Front Door, they've added several new features to it, including wreaths, skeletons, anything you decorate your door with for Halloween and Christmas. But really, upgrading from standard to premium without downtime. We just talked about managed identities integration is now there, so you can leverage your Azure identities. Integration with the Azure App Service, new pre-validated domain integrations with static web apps, new Terraform modules available for Azure Front Door, and the new Azure Advisor integration to make recommendations on how to save you money using your front door.
Finally, they discovered a feature flags.
Yeah, really.
Can we start the lightning round early now?
Yeah.
I'm giving you the tiebreaker right there. That's going to be the tiebreaker.
Well done. All right. Well, speaking of lightning round, it's time. Peter, take it away.
AWS Certificate Manager now supports elliptical curve digital signature algorithm TLS certificates.
Cool. Now I only have to wait 4 years until my app can support it.
Yeah.
Stole my joke. It's fine.
You gotta sneak it in under the wire.
Yeah.
Amazon Elasticache adds support for Redis 7.
I'm just going to wait till it turns up to 11, and then I'm going to cache everything.
Nice.
Do you cash out at that point?
Yeah, definitely cache out.
AWS private 5G service now includes support for multiple radio units.
So now, instead of only supporting 50 devices, they can now support 50 times however many radios you get.
But they can charge you per device, can't they? Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Amazon Elasticache now supports IPv6.
When your caching needs to have IPv6, you really lost the trail on what you need to do in your life. And, you think about your decisions and you ponder them and you cry a little bit and then you go to bed.
And we're going to wrap it up with a GA announcement. Encrypt Azure storage account with cross-tenant customer managed keys.
What could go wrong? Finding the right customer with the right key and the right account And the right storage account, it's just a mess all the way down. And I don't know how I'll ever figure that out in an instant.
Feature request. Make sure no one can access this data ever under any circumstance. Thanks, Azure.
Oh my goodness. What a day. Ryan, take it away. Dying to give it to Jonathan with the tiebreaker. And he just, it's like Beetlejuice. Someone threw a zipper in
Too
his
much
mouth.
pressure.
He couldn't get the zipper open.
Nice job, Ryan. That was a good win.
Yep.
Stealing the joke out from underneath you, being quick, I feel like I earned it this time, so that's good.
You did totally earn it. I'm not even mad. I can't be mad when you snake that right out from underneath me. So. All right. Well, things coming up. Once again, reInvent is just a few short weeks away. We are excited to hear all the new amazing AWS things that are coming. And there might be other stuff at the end of the year, but I'm tired of talking about it. And so we're just going to talk about reInvent, and then it's going to be the end of the year. So that's how we're going to continue on through the end of the year here. And we'll recharge the things coming up list for the new year after the New Year's Day. That's it. Have another fantastic week in the cloud, guys.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.
All right. Well, we are going to talk about Alexa, because apparently a report came out this week that Amazon is tightening its belt and Alexa's looking a little fat. Will they kill Alexa or not? Who knows? But in the wake of major tech companies tightening their belts, slowing down hiring and laying off thousands of workers, Amazon is, according to a Wall Street Journal report, taking a hard look across its nearly $200 billion a year revenue generating businesses for unprofitable sectors and places they can cut back. And Amazon is apparently spending a lot of money on Alexa, reportedly losing $5 billion a year on Alexa itself. Amazon, of course, denies this report, but it does say they are moving talent around, and potentially there may be a drain of talent on Alexa if it's not profitable. I imagine they're trying to figure out how to make it more profitable for them going forward. So I don't know they kill Alexa. Like, it would be such a huge pivot for them to kill Alexa at this point, and it'd be such a backwards move for them. I can't see that happening, but maybe, downturns and recessions cause hard decisions to be made.
$5 billion a year also sounds like an extremely large amount of loss for a unit, which I don't know. Like, what do they spend that money on?
Well, I think that includes devices. So I think the Echo speakers, all the Alexa HomePod, all those things are all part of that $5 billion number. So all the R&D you do on new devices, the manufacturing, the distribution, the stocking, and the warehousing, all that's part of that business unit.
It might be artificially inflated because it was only, a couple years ago that, the main topic for reInvent was Warner talking about Alexa for Business, right? And so it's, I wonder if they sort of bulked up for something that didn't happen, because I don't see Alexa Business anywhere, right, or any mention of it anymore for a long time now.
Yeah, I think that's
so
valid.
I wonder if they sort of were bulking up for that and never got there.
Yeah, well, they talked about partnerships with hotel chains, where they're going to put Alexa devices into hotel rooms. Well, that just never seems to ever actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of privacy concerns now around Alexas that is, maybe potentially a risk for them in the EU, where they're concerned about potential regulatory crackdowns on data privacy, and maybe they're worried about that. I don't know. Like, it's definitely been a really bright shining star for them, but also they got a little too close to the sun with it in a couple areas, got burned pretty badly.
I mean, when you look back at over the past few years since these home assistants have become available, do you think the technology has evolved as much as you would have expected or would have wanted it to by now? Because I don't use Alexa very often. I'm more of a Google Home person, but I have the same conversations. I have the same challenges. It doesn't really do a whole lot more than it did 3 years ago.
Well, it definitely has not heavily innovated, I think, in its core functionality. I mean, I think you get some innovations around Echo Show, When you get get the little screen and the built-in iPad to it, and it can do things visually as well as audio. But yeah, the core skills stuff seems like it's kind of hit a dead end. And I don't see a lot of people doing a lot of skills building. I don't see a lot of people announcing new skills. I mean, you and I worked at a company where they were thinking Alexa was going to be a huge market for them, and they never could figure out how to sell an engagement for more than a couple $100,000 really, to build Alexa skills and build integrations. I think home automation has always been a difficult market, and it's very fractured. There's a lot of players. There's a lot of different technologies. There's a lot of different pieces, and so I think it's where it's still the strongest is in home automation. But I think home automation in general has gone through a lot of turmoil in the last couple of years.
Well, I think that's the best part about the home assistants is just that, how many more options there are for home automation as there were before them. But it is still fractured, and it is, still a challenge to get everything to work together. And you still need a lot of sort of glue and cobbling things together to make it work. I wonder if the improvements have been really in the sort of the natural language processing and the understanding, because one thing, like, while it's still very error prone, it's a lot better than it was in the early days.
Yeah, it's still not as conversational as I'd like, though. I mean, I imagine the Star Trek computer kind of conversation level of dealing with that kind of thing, not having to choose my phrases very carefully because I know that's the way I have to get the tool to do what I want it to do.
Yeah. I mean, you don't think Earl Grey hot is, a manufactured cadence in order to get the computer to do what he wanted? Because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what that is.
I do think that they did add some capabilities to it where they took basically the ability for it to like ask follow-up questions and to further refine a question or prompt to it. But even that's a weird archaic conversation. Like when you're in that scenario where you said, hey, Alexa, tell me the weather and whatever, or tell me the weather in California, then you're like, oh, actually I want the weather in Sacramento. You can do that, but it's still a weird, awkward phrasing situation.
Yeah, it's like, what's the temperature in Sacramento today? Blah, 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 blah. And will it rain? It's like the persistence of context in the conversation. I think they've tried, but it's not quite there.
It's not there yet, for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if a huge misstep was trying to embed the Alexa into everything. Like I have headphones with it enabled. There's it's enabled into my son's laptop. It's, which I always thought was annoying. Like it was, they did enablement in a Fitbit for a while, so you could have one on your wrist for a thing that didn't connect to the internet. Like it, there's a whole bunch of things that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
I will say having one in the car is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, my fridge has the Alexa app installed, and every day it pops up a message. Please configure the Alexa app. I'm like, nope, swipe away. No, thank you. I don't need to make it any easier for my kids or visitors to accidentally order things.
Yeah. Oh, how frustrating that you have to do that every day.
Yeah.
You can't just tell it once.
Can't uninstall the app. Yep.
That's annoying. My annoyance with it actually is I'll come in and I went on my desk, actually unplugged it because I knew I was going to say the word Alexa about a bajillion times. But it'll be yellow, and I'm like, why is it yellow? Because that's a message notification. So I'll ask it, Alexa, what's your notification? And they'll tell me, I just want you to know that your inkjet printer is running low on ink, and would you like us to buy you more ink, or my, we've calculated that your dryer sheets, you're probably out of those, and would you like us? And like, that's just annoying. I don't want that feature.
But you do until you don't until you do, right? Like if it was something that I, was actually handy, and wasn't dryer sheets or the inkjet, which is just, I think they come low, right? They just, whatever Scion is just how they sell them. But yeah, if it was like, I think this bulb is burnt out on your car, or, I'm trying to think of a more practical use, it would be kind of nice for something like that. And so like the ability to tune it and, say, don't notify me for this, but notify me for this. Like I have it all turned off because you can turn it off. And that's how I actually know that the device is actually hooked up to my wife's account because, the yellow light's on. It's using her account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's an area that has also been sort of weak because, again, my wife is the one who bought the Prime account, so she's got Prime on hers, and I'm a guest of her Prime. That doesn't mean you don't get full Prime access when you do that.
It's awful. Yeah.
It's annoying.
Thank God I'm the primary account holder. Otherwise, I would throw them all out the window. But my wife can't do anything.
Yeah. But, so it happened to be when we got the Alexas first, they're in her name first. And so they're all in her account. And then it doesn't really have good multi-account support. So I can't, some of those features I can't even use because it doesn't properly support multi-user account integration. So, sort of the problem, I wonder if they're held back by the hardware they've chosen to use, right? They're trying to maintain this really low cost point, which means they can't put GPUs into this thing. They can't put things that can run ML on device. And so you end up going back to the cloud for a lot of this capability, which has delay and latency, which is a bad user experience too. And maybe this is a good use case for the edge devices that they're, all the cloud on edge stuff. But it definitely, I wonder if it's sort of hindered by its hardware choices. I have another dingus on the other side of the room from Apple that is horrendous. But a lot of its smarts are actually in the device, and that's not much better. But is that really a reflection of Siri versus it's the hardware itself? And I would be compelled to pay for something that had more smarts inside of it in exchange for better privacy and better local optimizations for these things. But that doesn't seem to exist in the market.
Well, it's funny because you're probably right. They are held back by the hardware, but the user account, I think, is a pretty good indicator of the hangups that most businesses face, which is actually account management, right? It's sort of like that's a crux to a lot of businesses, and it's hard. And so, I think they're probably more limited by just the architecture of the Amazon Commerce site's account services and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
If you do want to check out a more security-oriented device that keeps your data local, check out Mycroft.ai. They've been building a home security assistant, security sort of privacy-focused home security or home assistant. Sorry, and they have hardware which may or may not be available yet. There was a Kickstarter a long time ago, and things kind of went slow and everything else. But you can download their home assistant and run it locally on Raspberry Pi or something. Or you can buy one of their devices, but the purpose of that is that it's very much not required to be cloud connected until, of course, you want to control things like doors, windows, alarms, media, that kind of thing, and then of course you've got to hook it up with the cloud connector, and you lose all those benefits. But
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I always start with that privacy mindset. And I'm not turning this on. It lasts 5 minutes because I want to turn it on and off from my phone or something like that. And the only way to do that is by connecting the thing.
So I after I remembered how to spell Mycroft, because it's Sherlock's brother, I had to then go find their website. And so I just went to the website, and I have to say that this hardware is hideous.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Oh my God. Because you had mentioned this to me before, and I had made a note, and then I had promptly forgotten about it. And so as you mentioned again, I was I'm gonna pull the browser up, and this one looks like a little miniature TV, from 1985.
It looks like something your kids might build from one of those Kiwi crates or something that they get monthly in the mail.
Yeah. And then this Mycroft Mark 1 looks like a Wally's head without the rest of his body.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know about they need some better hardware designers, I think, is maybe the problem with Mycroft.
They're on a budget.
Yeah. They might be limited by their hardware choices for sure, but yeah.
But like I said, you can use the software anywhere, so maybe that's interesting. But it's interesting too because I think if you killed Alexa, it would also impact Alex, which is pretty popular service apparently for Amazon. And then also, I think that would impact Connect because I think Connect uses a lot of the stuff they learned from Alexa and Lex to help do voice enablement for their support products. So, it's one of those areas. Yes, this product may not make a ton of money, but it's enabled so many other things for them to build. It's sort of it's not foundational like S3 is, but it's a pretty core piece of their ML/AI ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about the data ingestion sort of pipeline that they have set up for that. That would that really has powered those services. I've always just assumed that they managed to productize the stuff they built for Alexa, right? So that they resell you Lex now directly and resell you things that were developed to support it. But that's very interesting.
I mean, that's why Google's voice stuff or Google's stuff is so good on this, because they used Google Voice and transcribing voicemail messages as the training engine for all of their AI for voice recognition. So that's why theirs is so far superior, because we all got excited about Google Voice, where it would transcribe our voicemails to text, so we actually read them, because none of us like to listen to voicemails. And then it would say, you know, do you have a correction? And you would correct things. And then they took all that data and they fed it back into their ML. So that's why Google is just really far ahead of everybody else in, you know, voice recognition and voice commands. And, you know, I also have a Google home to puck somewhere in this house somewhere that's unplugged, because, you know, why I don't trust Amazon so much with my data privacy for Alexa, I really don't trust Google with what they're doing with that data. But you know, it's definitely interesting. You know, there's so much power, but also so much risk. This device in your home listening 24/7.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that's going to get all those devices thrown out the window is just lack of good parental controls. At least the Google devices, you can tie different user accounts to, and it learns your voice print, and you can restrict things based on who it thinks is talking to you. But even then, it's just really annoying having kids talking to a machine in the corner when they're
you could just end it having kids. It's really annoying having kids. Full stop.
It's actually one of the big reasons why we got rid of all the Oculus Quest devices in the house, is because of the lack of parental controls. There's just no way to protect your kids from that ecosystem. And like, you know, if you don't want them to play a certain game, you can't block them by user. You can't do anything. You can't prevent people from messaging them or chatting with them on the headsets. Like, it's horrendous. And so, yeah, you're right. Parental controls becomes a big issue in technology adoption when you have kids that you don't think about till you have them.
Mm-hmm.
And Zuckerberg, because he's a robot, doesn't have children, and so Oculus is horrendous.
Right?
Didn't they just change their terms and conditions and basically ban kids under a certain age from having accounts on that now?
Yeah, but like, I mean, yes, they've always not allowed kids under the age of 14 or 12. But the challenge there is, you know, I have an account. It just prevents them from having an account, and then they use my account, and then they go do stuff, and I can't control my account either. So,
or they lie when they put in the birth date, right?
Yeah, or they
it
do
took my son all of like 3.5 seconds to be like, oh, okay, then I was born in 1962 now.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think Alexa's going away. I question the source of the report. I question the $5 billion loss.
I think the cost cutting will be there. I definitely do. And so, do you get some talent drain because of that? Like, I think they'll definitely trim that. Especially if it's anywhere near $5 billion.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, but they've built so many devices under the Alexa brand name, right? Like, you know, like they built a Post-it printer. They built like a cuckoo clock thing, and like they had all these really dumb devices that, you know, cost them money to build and develop, but just didn't make sense because, you know, and like I like the idea of the Post-it note printer, but it only works through the Alexa, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I bought one, and then I never use it because I have to write a note and then send it to my Alexa for it to print it out on the Post-it note, and like it's way too much friction. I just want it to be a printer in my house.
I'll just bring you a pen over.
Yeah. It gets the point that you just write it on pen. Yeah. It's much faster. So.
I mean, that's what we want, right? We want someone following us around that can be dynamic like a human and do the things, right? The Post-it note printer is a perfect example. Like, you just want to yell at the thing, have it spit out a thing, but then you also want it to also do other things, right? Like, it's too specialized in that case.
But Amazon has that new robot too, didn't they? The Astro. I would assume that Astro also uses Alexa technology too, wouldn't you think?
Mm-hmm. I would assume.
I guess Alexa is just an implementation based on the primitives that they built for language recognition and all those other bits and pieces. So maybe some of the R&D costs that went into it actually you could allocate to those other services. So, you know, maybe
that's why I don't think it'll fully go away, right? Because I don't think it has to, right? In order for it to make sense. Right, you have all these other business markets. You have the underlying voice processing. You have all these things. You have, you know, I don't know if the robots are here to stay because those are getting pretty universally panned. But, you know, I think it'll just exist. Maybe it won't develop as fast, or maybe the quality of service will go down. But.
Yeah, I don't think they need to do much work on the hardware. I've still got the pucks we got from reInvent years ago. Mm-hmm. They still work just fine. You know, It's the magic's in the software, not the hardware. So they could probably afford to not release a new device for a couple of years. and save some money there. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't put them into every hotel room though, because that would just be creepy.
It would be creepy, especially when you learn about all the data privacy things where audio snippets were being shared and all kinds of problems that they had.
Yep.
You have to have like big red buttons in your room, like right inside the door, like "Don't listen to me" button, and "Don't watch me" button. Turn off all the lights. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you get all these like, it's like a Black Mirror episode. You get a free hotel stay as long as you live stream your visit to somebody.
I mean, that the funny part about that is like I'm pretty boring. That might work out. Like, I guess if you guys want to watch, with that guy lying around, all right.
Yeah. I mean, you see sometimes like flick through TikTok or something, and there's like 8,000 people viewing the stream, and somebody just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you people?
Some of the stuff I catch my kids, it's the same thing. Like, what? This is typing.
Yep.
Well, again, with her purchase of iRobot too, like, doesn't that also factor into this?
Well, that's the really confusing part, right? They spent all that money on iRobot, and then is that related? Like, are they trying to replace some of that, business and merge that together? Efficiencies there, like, or even just looking at it. Maybe it was just the idea of researching that triggered the article, right?
Maybe
it could be a little telephone game.
I don't think the iRobot acquisition has been approved yet, so it's not done. And then we joked about it when they announced it that they really wanted to get Ben Kehoe. Well, he's actually resigned. He's leaving iRobot.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he announced on Twitter he's I think today might be his last day, or maybe next week. But he's leaving iRobot. He's going to take some time off to do something else, take a break, and then get back into something new and exciting. So we'll see where Ben ends up in the future. Maybe we'll get him on since he's going to be on sabbatical. We can talk about stuff again. But
maybe I can finally ask him what he's going to do next.
Yeah. But yeah, so I keep your eyes on that space, because that's a pretty big move in the AWS Hero ecosystem. So we'll see. All right, well, I agree with you guys. I don't think Alexa's going anywhere. I just signed up for the list to buy Astro though, because I sort of want one. But anyways, we'll see if I get approved to buy a little robot for my house, because I have a single story house. He'd be perfect here.
Yeah,
wander around. So, all right. Well, I will talk to you guys next week.
All right, sounds good.
See you guys.